Hello everybody, this is Harshada Pithe. I am going to talk about the 12 tissue remedy or the biochemic therapeutics today. Before that, I would like to give myself a brief introduction. Introducing myself is a little funny, but here we go. My bachelor's is in zoology and my master's is in environmental science, and I have some work experience of being a research fellow in conservation of wildlife. Following that, I have been a homemaker and a mother for the past 8 years, and during my entire time um, of higher education and later starting my own home, I have been completely dependent on biochemic salts or biochemic medicines for my ailments, for my health, and for preventing ailments and so on and so forth. Mm, in our house, biochemic salts came around 15 to 16 years ago when my mother started learning about them. And following that, our entire family was driven towards using them, towards exploring them, towards studying them. If anybody knows my mother, they might quite be aware that if she takes something into her mind, she makes sure, and if it's something worth it, if it is some good cause, then the entire family or her entire existence is wrapped around understanding that thing, researching on it, implementing it, carrying it out, bringing it into her life as much as possible. And the same thing happened about biochemic salts and biochemic therapy. And finally, till about 5 years ago, for about 5 years ago, my mother has been taking classes of the same online as well as offline. And she insisted that I follow her footsteps and start an English batch. My English batch, my first English batch is about to end right now. And while I'm embarking on this journey of teaching a little more dedicatedly, I thought I'll make this video for everybody to kind of see what kind of a journey they are going to be on. So today I'm going to talk about the introduction part of 12 tissue salts. So here goes. 12 tissue remedy is basically around 200 years ago. It was discovered by, no, let's not say discovered, but it was established by um, a German homeopath or called Dr. Schussler, and he went on a series of experiments, and then he wrote a book about the 12 tissue salts. His first set of analyses was of combustion of the human body. So he went ahead and burned the human body either by its parts, like burning the blood and seeing what stays behind, burning the bile, burning the skin and different parts without adding anything, like pure combustion. And there he found that around somewhere around these 12 salts were what was left behind. And then he realized that apart from whatever organic that belongs to our body, these 12 salts are the inorganic components of our body which might be essential for its survival, for its well-being, and for its health. So then he started studying on what role that each and every salt might be playing. and that's how the therapy originated. Uh, Actually speaking, these 12 salts are naturally present in our food and naturally present all around us in the soil, in the minerals. There are mineral deposits of these salts, and which are easily available for us to consume and replenish in our body and carry out bodily reactions in with the help of these inorganic salts. So you might be wondering, then why bother taking medicines of it, you know? Yeah, so basically these salts are mainly for mainly for yeah, just give me a minute. Huh. So these salts are basically our catalysts, are facilitators of all the bodily reactions. Out of that, the facilitator part, let's see an example. Like for example, ferrum phosphoricum, that is, the phosphate of iron is present in the hemoglobin molecules of the red blood cells. These phosphate of iron molecules in the lungs, when the red blood cells are going to carry the oxygen exchange, that is exhaling of the carbon dioxide and inhaling of the oxygen, in that particular reaction the ferrum phos or the phosphate of iron becomes the carrier of oxygen. The oxygen comes and binds onto this molecule inside the hemoglobin, and which is again inside the red blood cells, and then that is taken to the rest of the body, and that's how oxygen is supplied to the rest of the body. So in absence of ferrum phos, what might happen? There might be a rush in the body to supply oxygen, and in that process the red blood cells will be rushing everywhere, and that might cause a certain heat generation, and you might get some um, sensation of hotness in the regions where ferrum phos is deficient, because the blood is flowing very fast and that is causing the heat generation. Sometimes it also causes a certain redness on the skin. So as in when we have a blunt wound or so, we see that it gets really warm and red, like angry red. Now, these become the signs of a ferrum phos deficiency, or the phosphate of iron deficiency is what we call. Then, having said that, let's see what salts are there in the 12 tissue salts. So first of all, in the 12 tissue salts, we have the three calcium salts. There's the calcium phosphate, the calcium sulfate, and the calcium fluoride. All these three are contributing towards the building of our skeletal system. So basically calcium for bones, right? We know that association. So here also, obviously calcium is going to go and help the bones to rebuild. But calcium in these three compounds also helps um, in the epithelial tissues, in the enamel of the teeth, in the health of the bone marrows, and some such thing. So basically, in biochemic salts, we have three different kinds of calcium supplements. And the main thing about biochemic salts is that they are made in such a way that they are a very dilute, a very minute form of these molecules. So these the purest form of these molecules is taken, and then in a dilution of 1 is to 9, so 9 particles of sugar of milk, so lac- lactic sugar, and one particle of the purest form of these salts is taken and is triturated. So they are used in a mortar and pestle and they are triturated till they combine, and then this is formed as the 1x potency. So simultaneously they do that process 6 times and that becomes 6x potency. They do that process 200 times and then that becomes 200x potency. So the higher the potency of the salt, so for example 200x has a more dilute form of, let's say, calcium phosphate as opposed to a 6x or a 30x, right? So this also means that the more minute form of the medicine, that goes deeper into the body and it stays longer into the body. A 6x um, salt might stay for, let's say, generally for about 24 hours in the body, while a 200x can stay up to 6 months in the body and it keeps acting, keeps making itself available for the bodily reactions, right? So the first we discussed were the three calcium salts in biochemic form. So in minute form. So that's three calcium supplements. After that, we have two sodium supplements. The sodium muriaticum, which is sodium chloride, which is a regular salt, and sodium sulfate, which is natrum sulfuricum. So basically both of these salts try to maintain the water level inside the body, and there is natrum phosphoricum also, which maintains the acidity of that water, of that fluid inside the body. So they are concerned with the fluid, the cellular fluid, the extracellular fluid, and the pH of the entire body. Next we have the Kali group. The Kali group also has three salts. There is the Kali muraticum, which is potassium chloride. Kali group means the potassium group. The next we have is the Kali phosphoricum, the, the potassium phosphate, and then the potassium sulfate, Kali sulfuricum. So these three work on the nucleus part of the cells inside the body. They also have a commonality of working on the connective tissue of the body. So connective tissue are basically cement like functioning cells which bind the other organs together. Right. So between, let's say, the epithelial tissue and the subcutaneous fat, there is a layer of connective tissue, on the skin and everywhere. There's connective tissue between the nerves, there's connective tissue between the spinal cord and the nerves. So everywhere these Kali group um, mainly exist and make sure that the connective tissue is functioning properly. Then the next we have is the magnesium phosphoricum. So it is magnesia phosphoricum, it's magnesium phosphate. Magnesium phosphate works on the spasms of the muscles, and it works on the nerves that take um, impulses to the muscles. Okay, so it is an antispasmodic. It's a very essential salt, as you might normally read that magnesium is essential for cramps. It's essential, in treating cramps, in treating inflammations. So if you take crude magnesium supplement as opposed to a biochemic supplement, you might not find that the body is able to absorb it from the supplements that you're taking. While magnesium phosphoricum is a salt that is naturally present inside the body. So when there's a deficiency of it and you supply the same molecule, it's easy for the body to take it up, especially when it is biochemic, so it is in a very dilute form. Then the body is very easily going to take it up, and very easily you can see almost instantaneous effects of consuming that salt. So then all of that is done. Then we have our ferrum phosphoricum. We discussed about it. It is a phosphate of iron and it's our oxygen carrier. And because it takes oxygen all across the body, it also works as an anti-inflammatory, and it also works in wound healing. So we have medicines that range from working on our skeletal system, working on our nervous systems, working on our muscles, working on our connective tissues. And then the last few ones are, the last one is silica. And I guess we have covered everything. So silica is basically silicon dioxide. Silicon dioxide, so silica is abundant in nature, but it is very little found inside our body. So wherever it is found, it is very essential. It does the very important function of removing pus or removing the dead and debris from our body. So that is the function of silica. So it helps tremendously in healing abscesses, in healing and ripening abscesses, and removing pus, and separating the healthy tissue from the debris tissue or from the pus cells, so that the healing can be accelerated while the pus can be discharged from the body. So these are the wide ranges of functions that these 12 tissue salts have. Why do you think they are so vital? One theory is that though biochemic salts were discovered in Germany by a homeopath around 200 years ago, a lot of the principles of biochemic salts were already being followed in Ayurveda. And we know that Ayurveda is at least thousands of years ago, uh, is in our culture from thousands of years ago. So basically, even our traditional cooking customs or eating customs have the principles of biochemic salts being followed. So let's see a few examples about that. Traditionally, we have a tradition of eating on banana leaves, right? So we lay banana leaves like our traditional plates and lay our food on it and eat. So banana leaves have our natrum phos in them, and natrum phos naturally, when you put hot food on it, on the banana leaf, gets mixed onto the food, and our ability to digest it, because natrum phos is an antacid, so our ability to digest that food better increases. Our tendency of getting acidity from that food decreases. Likewise, the palash leaves, there's a tree in central India, actually across the country, called palash or Butea monosperma. Its flowers are very beautiful and it has these very wide uh, leaves, almost circular looking leaves. Basically, yeah. So then these leaves were used to make the natural katoris. So like you could cap them into a nice, we call them drone, and use them as natural katoris, or then you could stitch the leaves together and make like a leaf plate, patravali basically. So it was also natural for us to eat from these leaves, and these leaves also contain this antacid, the biochemic antacid that we know, natrum phos, and that would also help us digest the food better. Likewise, the contents of garam masala also contain this antacid natrum phos and antispasmodic ferrum phos. So spasms also tend to give us flatulence. So the presence of MAC helps us get less gas, right? So when you use garam masala spices in cooking your proteins, the proteins are better digested. They are naturally for us, we help us break down those heavy complex molecules better in our body. That is why probably so many years ago we have developed these traditional recipes of using these specific spices as garam masala in especially cooking our dals, our pulses, our meat in them, and we have developed our cuisine that way. So the concluding statement for me is that our Indian culture has been in existence from the prehistoric times to the present day without a gap. So there has always been a trace of the Indian culture without it vanishing anytime. There has been a continuous survival of this civilization. So one of the big reasons might be all of these traditional things which have worked since time immemorial to now, and they're still mm, helping us to sustain a healthy lifestyle and thriving on this land. So yeah, that's that. Then one might think, why do we bother about another therapy while we have Ayurveda, which is following the similar principles, when we have allopathy, which does give you results. It's very result oriented therapy. They're all there. So why bother with something new? Why should I sit and learn this? So, like I said, these biochemic salts are made by combining nine parts of lactose sugar plus one part of the pure salt, and you're combining it by triturating it in a mortar and pestle. In this process, what happens is the molecules of this salt first of all get diluted 1 is to 9 in this milk sugar, but simultaneously their um, structure changes, their molecular structure changes, they become uh, more available, their surface area increases, they become potentized. So when you dissolve them in water, they will easily dissociate into ions, into charged ions. And you should remember that these are molecules which are familiar to our body. So as and when we eat them in this format, then for a body that is either diseased or injured or unwell, for that body, such diluted, potentized, increased surface area molecules become very easy for the body to absorb, and the body doesn't have to take any extra efforts. Like, for example, in English medicine or allopathic medicine, as well as in Ayurvedic medicine, the medicine we take first goes to the stomach, then to the intestine. From the intestine itself, it can be absorbed into the bloodstream and then taken to the area where it is required. So we call that area as the focus. But biochemic remedies, the moment you dissolve them on your put them on your tongue and they dissolve in your saliva, they dissociate into these charged ions, with negative charges and positive charges. And from the saliva, they're directly absorbed into the lymphatic circulation system. What is the lymphatic circulation system? So, this is like the blood circulation system. We have a completely different circulation system which carries this clear fluid, and it helps maintain our immunity. So this lymphatic electrical system quickly absorbs these, charged ions of biochemic salts. And because they have a charge, they reach the place of requirement through this lymphatic system super fast. And even before you could think of burping or think of drinking water over the English medicines or Ayurvedic medicines, these biochemic medicines have already reached the focus and have already started doing their magic and, you know, curing the deficiency super fast. Plus, because they are charged particles, they go to the focus where the opposite charge is attracting them like a magnet, and they don't go anywhere else in the body. So there are no side effects to this, and you can only find good results out of it. Yeah, that's how simple it is. Likewise, uh, you know, these 12 salts we saw had several, functions and uses in the body. So carrying just a small packet full of these 12 salts is sufficient to save us from probably a food poisoning or a dizziness or a cramp, or all these day-to-day things that can cause us discomfort at home. So this becomes a very convenient home remedy. Okay, so this can easily give us something that we can go to in case something happens in the house. So like for example, I have not given my children allopathic or ayurvedic medicines for 99% of their illnesses, apart from very serious illnesses or in places where I was not around to give them the medicines. They have taken the other therapies, but otherwise we have completely relied on biochemic salts and very successfully used them in healing everything. Same here with us. I have worked in remote locations while I was working, and now also I live in a rural area where a dispensary or a specialist doctor is not readily available. You know, I have not required going to a specialist doctor or, um, you know, for any regular illness or ailment or a wound or a sprain or anything. We have managed entirely on biochemic salts, and I believe we have successfully got ourselves out of all these situations very successfully. Um, so that's the convenience of the therapy. Then another thing that I would like to tell you is, while we are studying biochemic salts, we learn to understand the simple malfunctions in our body. The tiny malfunctions which, if ignored, can become pathological malfunctions in the body, which can be detected by pathological tests and then can be called a disease or a life threatening condition. But this, while we are studying biochemic salts, we can understand that in a very early stage, and with minimum biochemic salt treatment, we can make sure that the tendency or the tiny malfunction can be taken care of then and there, so that it doesn't blow up into becoming this pathological ailment or disease. So this is how, by studying biochemic salts, we can be self-aware, of what salt is being deficient in our body. How do I, cure this deficiency? How do I observe my body of what might happen to me? How do I predict if this remains unattended? What all are the possibilities? Or if this has remained unattended in a person or a patient for several decades, now what will happen if we don't attend to the deficiencies right now? So this kind of body awareness of the physical status of the body can happen if you study biochemic salts. So this, I think, is probably one of the biggest and most important advantages of knowing biochemic salts and their role in our body. That gives us a certain autonomy over our body, right? So, yeah, here I conclude my introduction to this therapy. And once again, I like to pay my gratitude to this therapy, because it is it has been a life changing um, knowledge that has come into our lives. It has given us autonomy, like I said. It has given us a lot of independence and a lot of confidence, a lot of self belief. We could go travel, we have our medicines. At least 90 to 95% of the time, we know what to do in case something happens to our body or of our loved ones' bodies. So, yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you.